The massive Zephyrian Imperial Armada appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like a giant shadow covering the stars. 10,000 warships floated in space, each one as big as a small city. They moved in perfect lines, creating a wall of metal and power that had never been defeated. Admiral Kethvar walked slowly across the bridge of his flagship called Dominator's Wrath. His 4 yellow eyes looked at the glowing screens in front of him. Each screen showed him something different about the small blue planet ahead. He could see tiny metal objects floating around the third rock from the sun. These looked like simple mining stations that barely worked. "Look at this," Kethvar said to himself. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "They still dig holes in their moon like animals." The radio waves coming from Earth told him everything he needed to know. These humans were weak. They used old rocket ships that burned fuel like fire. They had not even figured out how to travel between stars properly. It was almost sad how backward they were. His tactical officer, a tall alien with 6 arms, came up beside him. "Sir, their technology is very old. They still use chemical rockets to fly around their own planet. This will be easier than taking candy from a baby." Kethvar's mouth parts clicked together. This was how his species showed they were happy or amused. In 3,000 years of fighting and winning, the Zephyrian Empire had never lost a single battle. They had taken over 847 different star systems. Each time it was the same story. The aliens would see the massive fleet coming and give up right away. "Perfect," Kethvar said. "Another planet full of primitives who think they are smart." He remembered the last world they had conquered just 6 months ago. The Altarians had better ships than these humans, but they still surrendered after seeing the Imperial fleet. They begged for mercy and offered to serve the Empire forever. Most species did this. It saved everyone time and trouble. Kethvar looked at the tactical display again. Earth looked so small and helpless compared to his mighty armada. The planet had only 1 moon, and it looked like the humans had barely touched it. There were a few small bases and some mining equipment, but nothing that looked dangerous. "Sir, should we send the usual surrender message?" asked his communications officer. "Not yet," Kethvar replied. "Let them see us first. Let them count our ships and realize how hopeless their situation is. Fear makes them more willing to give up without a fight." The bridge was full of aliens working at different stations. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had scales or fur. But they all served the Empire now. Most of them had been conquered too, but that was long ago. Now they were proud to be part of something bigger and stronger. Kethvar walked to the main viewing window. Through the thick glass, he could see his fleet stretching out in all directions. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering and destruction. They had weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Their shields could stop almost any attack. Their engines could cross the galaxy in weeks. "Begin the intimidation approach," Kethvar commanded, his voice carrying across the entire bridge. "Use standard formation Alpha 7. I want them to see every single ship we have." "Yes, sir," came the response from dozens of voices. The massive fleet began to move forward like a slow river of metal and death. Each ship took its position in the formation that had worked on hundreds of other worlds. The biggest warships went in front to look the most scary. The smaller ships spread out on the sides to show just how many there were. Kethvar had used this same approach so many times that he could do it in his sleep. First, the aliens would see the fleet and panic. Then they would try to contact other planets for help, but no help would come. Finally, they would send messages begging for mercy and offering to surrender. "How long until we reach their outer planets?" Kethvar asked. "About 18 hours at current speed, sir," replied the navigation officer. "Good. That gives them time to think about what they are facing. By the time we get close to their world, they will be ready to give up." The admiral looked at Earth again through his telescope. It was a pretty planet with blue oceans and white clouds. The continents were green and brown, which meant lots of life. It would make a nice addition to the Empire. The humans could work in the mines or build ships for the Imperial fleet. "Sir, we are detecting some radio chatter from the planet," said the communications officer. "They have noticed us." "Of course they have," Kethvar said with satisfaction. "Are they trying to contact us yet?" "No, sir, not yet. They seem to be talking to each other a lot though." This was normal too. The primitives always spent the first few hours talking among themselves, probably arguing about what to do. Some would want to fight, but the smart ones would realize it was hopeless. Eventually, the smart ones would win the argument. Kethvar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. In less than a day, Earth would belong to the Zephyrian Empire just like all the others. It would be conquest number 848, and it would be just as easy as all the rest. The Armada continued its slow, steady approach toward the small blue world, confident that victory was already theirs. Deep inside the Himalayan mountains, far below the snow and ice, Admiral Lee Jinho stood in a room that did not exist on any map. The room was huge and filled with glowing screens that showed pictures of space. Each screen was clear as glass and showed the alien ships coming toward Earth in perfect detail. Jinho was a calm man with gray hair and steady hands. He had been preparing for this day for 20 years. Behind him, dozens of people worked at computers and control panels. They all wore dark blue uniforms with no country flags. They belonged to Earth now, not to any single nation. "Sir, the aliens are sending us a message," said Captain Park Somin. She was a young woman with short black hair who worked at the communication station. Her fingers moved quickly across the glowing buttons in front of her. The alien voice came through the speakers like broken glass. The words were in English, but they sounded wrong, like someone learning to speak for the first time. "Primitive humans, you have 72 hours to submit to Imperial rule or face complete annihilation. Your crude weapons cannot stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire." Some of the younger officers looked worried when they heard this message. 10,000 alien warships was more than anyone had ever seen before. But Jinho just nodded slowly. He had expected this. Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho sat at a station covered in blinking lights and moving displays. He was the best sensor operator on Earth, and right now he was watching the aliens very carefully. "Admiral, their scans are very basic. They can see our cities and our old rockets, but they cannot see our real defenses at all." Jinho walked over to look at Kim's screens. The displays showed what the aliens were seeing when they looked at Earth. They saw the old space shuttle program. They saw the simple satellites that carried television signals. They saw the small research stations on the moon that looked like they were built with primitive tools. But they did not see the real Earth military. They could not see the hidden weapons platforms floating in space, covered by technology that made them invisible. They missed the secret bases built inside asteroids. They had no idea about the massive ships hiding behind the moon, waiting for orders. "Perfect," Jinho said quietly. "They think we are still using fireworks to reach space." Captain Park turned in her chair to face the Admiral. "Sir, should we respond to their message? Maybe we can buy more time." Jinho shook his head. "No. Let them think we are too scared to answer. Fear makes enemies careless." The truth was that Earth had been preparing for this day for almost 100 years. It started after the first radio signals from space that were clearly not natural. Scientists knew that other intelligent life existed, and they knew that someday it might come to Earth. Most countries wanted to send peaceful messages into space, hoping to make friends with aliens. But a few smart people realized that any species that could travel between stars was probably very dangerous. They started a secret project to build weapons and defenses that no alien would expect. The project grew slowly over many decades. Scientists from every country worked together in secret. They built new types of engines that did not use chemical fuel. They created weapons that could destroy objects moving faster than light. They developed shields and armor stronger than anything that existed before. Most importantly, they learned how to hide all of this technology so that anyone looking at Earth would only see the old, simple equipment that everyone knew about. Lieutenant Kim looked up from his station again. "Admiral, the aliens are moving into attack formation. They will reach Mars orbit in about 6 hours." "Good," Jinho replied. "That gives our outer defenses time to get into position." The room became quieter as everyone focused on their work. On the main display screen, they could see the massive alien fleet moving through space like a giant arrow pointed at Earth. Each ship was enormous, much bigger than anything humans had built openly. But size was not everything in space combat. Jinho had learned this lesson from studying every war in human history. The biggest army did not always win. Sometimes the smartest army won instead. Captain Park received another message from the aliens. This time the voice sounded more angry. "Humans, we detect no response to our generous offer. You have 71 hours remaining. Do not test our patience." Some of the officers smiled when they heard this. The aliens sounded like bullies in a school playground, threatening smaller kids to give them lunch money. "They have done this many times before," Jinho observed. "They are used to species that give up immediately." Kim nodded from his station. "Yes, sir. Their formation is very basic too. They are not expecting any real fight at all." Jinho walked to the center of the room where he could see all the displays at once. Each screen showed a different part of the solar system. Hidden human ships were moving into position everywhere, but the aliens could not see any of them. How many worlds have they conquered this way? Jinho wondered out loud. "According to their message, this will be number 848, Captain Park answered. "Then they are about to learn something new," Jinho said with a small smile. "They are about to meet humans. The alien fleet continued moving toward Earth, completely confident that this would be just another easy victory. They had no idea that they were flying into the most carefully planned trap in the history of warfare. The Zephyrian Imperial Armada moved past Mars like a giant wave of metal and destruction. Admiral Kethvar stood on his bridge feeling very pleased with himself. His 4 yellow eyes watched the red planet disappear behind them as they got closer to Earth. In just a few more hours, the humans would see his fleet up close and surrender immediately. "Sir, we are now in the inner solar system," reported his navigation officer. "Earth is directly ahead." Kethvar clicked his mandibles together happily. This felt exactly like all the other times. The primitive species would panic when they saw the size of his fleet. Then they would send desperate messages begging for mercy. Finally, they would surrender completely and become part of the Empire. "Any response from the humans yet?" he asked his communications officer. "No, sir, they are still silent. Their radio chatter has increased, but they have not contacted us directly." This was normal too. The scared aliens always talked among themselves first, probably arguing about whether to fight or give up. The smart ones always won these arguments because fighting the Empire was suicide. But something was wrong. The first sign of trouble came from the sensor station. A young officer with green scales looked up with confusion on his face. "Sir, I am detecting some strange readings from the asteroid belt." "What kind of readings?" Kethvar asked, not really worried yet. "Energy signatures that do not match natural asteroids. They almost look like..." The officer never finished his sentence. All around the Imperial Armada, space itself seemed to come alive. Objects that had looked like simple weather satellites around Earth suddenly changed. Metal panels slid away to reveal enormous weapons that had been hidden for decades. What the aliens thought were primitive communication devices were actually the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. But that was nothing compared to what happened in the asteroid belt. Huge chunks of rock that had been floating peacefully for years suddenly split apart like opening flowers. Inside each fake asteroid was a human warship bigger than anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. These ships had been sleeping in the cold darkness of space for decades, waiting for this exact moment. Battle stations. Kethvar screamed as alarms began blaring all over his ship. "All ships to battle stations immediately." But it was already too late. On the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Lee Jinho watched calmly as his trap finally closed. The ship was hidden behind Earth's moon, but now it moved out into open space. It was sleek in silver, covered in weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Captain Park So-min sat at her station with her hands moving quickly over the controls. Lights and displays showed her that every human ship in the solar system was ready for battle. "All stations report ready, Admiral," she announced in a clear voice. Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho, now promoted to commander for this battle, checked his weapon systems one more time. Railguns charged and ready to fire. Plasma arrays are online and locked onto targets. Exotic matter cannons are loaded and ready for deployment. Jinho looked at the main display screen. It showed all 10,000 alien ships spread out in their attack formation. For 3,000 years, this formation had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds. The aliens thought it made them look scary and powerful. But to human eyes, it just made them easy targets. The alien ships were flying in straight lines with no protection from their sides or rear. They had put their biggest ships in front and their smaller ships behind, which looked impressive but was tactically stupid. They were flying directly toward Earth with no idea that they were surrounded by enemies. "They really have never fought a real war," Jinho said quietly to himself. "They have only bullied defenseless planets." More human ships appeared all around the solar system. They came out of hiding behind Jupiter's moons, from inside Saturn's rings, and from secret bases on the far side of Pluto. Each ship was loaded with weapons that could destroy targets moving faster than light. The aliens finally realized they were in trouble, but they still did not understand how much trouble. "Sir, we are detecting massive energy readings from all directions," the Zephyrian sensor officer reported with panic in his voice. "There are ships everywhere." Admiral Kethvar stared at his displays in shock. Where there had been empty space just moments before, there were now thousands of human warships. Each one was pointing weapons directly at his fleet. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "Our sensors showed nothing." His tactical officer was frantically trying to count the enemy ships. "Sir, there are at least 5,000 human vessels surrounding us. Their technology is far more advanced than our intelligence reports indicated." For the first time in his long career, Admiral Kethvar felt real fear. His empire had conquered 847 worlds because those worlds were not ready for war. But these humans had been preparing for this fight for a very long time. On the Indomitable, Admiral Jinho studied the alien formation one final time. 10,000 ships that had terrorized the galaxy were now trapped in the most carefully planned ambush in military history. The aliens had flown directly into humanity's perfect trap, thinking they were hunting defenseless prey. Jinho spoke two words that would be remembered throughout the galaxy for generations to come. "Fire at will," he said quietly. In that moment, 10,000 years of human warfare and ingenuity was unleashed against an enemy that had never faced real resistance. The battle for Earth was about to begin, but it would not last very long. The moment Admiral Jinho said, "Fire at will," space around Earth turned into a storm of light and destruction. Every human weapon that had been hidden for decades opened fire at the same time. The darkness between the stars became bright as day with streaks of energy and metal flying through space. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes and 34 seconds. Admiral Kethvar stood frozen on his bridge as he watched his mighty fleet being torn apart like paper in a hurricane. The first human weapons to fire were railguns that shot pieces of metal faster than anything he had ever seen. These metal slugs hit his ships so hard that they went completely through the hulls and came out the other side. "Shields at maximum power," he screamed to his crew, but it did not matter. The Zephyrian shields had protected their ships for 3,000 years. They had stopped the weapons of hundreds of different alien species. But they crumpled like thin plastic against human weapons. The energy beams from Earth cut through the shields as if they were not even there. Kethvar watched his flagship sister ship, the Imperial Glory, get hit by something the humans called a plasma cannon. The entire front half of the massive warship simply melted away like ice cream in the sun. The back half spun wildly through space before exploding in a ball of fire. "Sir, we are taking heavy damage on all decks," his damage control officer reported. "Hull breaches on levels 5 through 15. We are losing life support." But Kethvar could barely hear him. He was too busy watching his invincible armada die. The human weapons were like nothing any species had ever created. They fired beams of pure energy that could cut a warship in half. They shot metal bullets that moved so fast they turned enemy ships into clouds of dust. Most terrifying of all, they used something called exotic matter weapons that made Zephyrian ships simply disappear from existence. On the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable, the battle looked very different. Commander Kim Tae-ho sat calmly at his weapons station, watching his targeting computer track dozens of enemy ships at once. "Target destroyed," he reported as another Zephyrian battleship exploded. "Moving to next target." Captain Park So-min watched the tactical display from her command chair. The green dots representing human ships were barely moving, while the red dots showing alien vessels were disappearing one by one. "Admiral, the enemy is trying to change formation, but they are too slow." Admiral Jinho nodded but said nothing. He had studied every battle in human history from ancient sword fights to modern space combat. He knew that this fight had been over before it started. The aliens had made every possible mistake. They flew in straight lines that made them easy targets. They bunched their ships together so that one human weapon could hit multiple enemies. Most importantly, they had no idea how to fight against an enemy that was ready for them. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar realized that his 3,000-year winning streak was about to end in the worst way possible. Half of his fleet was already destroyed, and the other half was being picked apart ship by ship. "All ships, retreat immediately," he screamed into his communicator. "Full speed away from Earth." But when his navigation officer tried to activate the hyperdrive engines that would let them escape to deep space, nothing happened. "Sir, we cannot jump to hyperspace," the officer reported with terror in his voice. "Something is blocking our engines." Around the entire solar system, massive human machines called gravity well generators had turned on. These devices created invisible barriers that trapped anything trying to leave. The Zephyrian fleet was stuck in Earth's solar system like fish in a net. "We are trapped," Kethvar whispered to himself. The human weapons kept firing without stopping. Every few seconds, another Zephyrian warship would explode or break apart. The survivors tried to fight back, but their weapons barely scratched the human ship's armor. Commander Kim looked up from his station on the Indomitable. "Admiral, enemy fleet strength is down to 8% and still falling. Most of their remaining ships are too damaged to fight." Captain Park was listening to radio messages from the dying alien fleet. "Sir, they are broadcasting surrender requests on all frequencies. They are begging us to stop shooting." Admiral Jinho walked to the main viewing window and looked out at the wreckage floating through space. Where there had once been 10,000 proud warships, there were now just scattered pieces of metal and a few hundred damaged survivors. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, which had never lost a single battle in 3,000 years, had just been completely destroyed by a species they thought was primitive. "Cease fire," Jinho ordered. "All ships, cease fire immediately." The human weapons stopped shooting and space became quiet again. The surviving Zephyrian ships drifted helplessly through the debris of their comrades, their engines dead and their weapons broken. Admiral Kethvar looked around his bridge at his surviving crew members. Many were injured and all of them looked shocked. For the first time in the history of their empire they had lost a battle. Not just lost it but been completely crushed by an enemy they had not taken seriously. "Sir," his communications officer said in a shaky voice, "the humans are trying to contact us." Kethvar took a deep breath and tried to stand up straight. Even in defeat he was still an Imperial Admiral. "Put them through," he said. The face that appeared on his screen was calm and human, with gray hair and steady eyes. This was Admiral Li Jinho, the man who had just destroyed the most powerful fleet in the galaxy in less than 18 minutes. The face of Admiral Li Jinho appeared on the cracked and sparking screens of the Zephyrian flagship. Admiral Kethvar sat in his damaged command chair, green blood flowing from cuts on his face and arms. His 4 eyes stared at the human commander with a mix of fear and complete shock. Jinho looked calm and peaceful, as if he had not just destroyed the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. His gray hair was neat, his uniform was clean, and his voice was steady and quiet. "I am Admiral Li Jinho of the Earth Defense Fleet," the human said. His words were clear and easy to understand, but they carried the weight of absolute authority. "I am broadcasting this message to the entirety of Zephyrian space through your quantum entanglement communicators." Kethvar realized with growing horror that this message was not just for him. The human was using their own communication system to speak directly to every planet, every ship, and every leader in the Zephyrian Empire at the same time. Billions of aliens across hundreds of star systems were watching this moment. Jinho continued speaking in the same calm voice. "You came to our world believing us weak because we appeared primitive. This was your fatal error." On planets throughout Zephyrian space, military leaders and government officials watched in stunned silence as the human explained what had just happened. The mighty Imperial Armada, which had never lost a battle in 3,000 years, had been completely destroyed in less than 20 minutes. "Humanity has spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare against our own species," Jinho said. "We have survived ice ages that killed most life on our planet. We have lived through plagues that wiped out entire cities. We have fought world wars where millions of our own people died." The Admiral paused for a moment, letting his words reach every corner of the Empire. In the silence, Kethvar could hear the sounds of his dying ship around him. Sparks flew from broken equipment, and emergency alarms wailed in the distance. "We have survived every catastrophe imaginable," Jinho continued. "Asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, nuclear weapons, and diseases that almost ended our species. Each time we became stronger and smarter." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Park Somin and Commander Kim Taeho stood quietly behind their admiral. They knew they were witnessing history being made. This message would change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Jinho looked directly into the camera, and it seemed like he was looking into the eyes of every person watching. "We chose to appear primitive because we learned long ago that the greatest strength is the strength your enemies never see coming." Across Zephyrian space, military commanders began to understand the terrible truth. The humans had not been caught by surprise. They had been waiting and preparing for this invasion for decades, maybe centuries. "You conquered 847 worlds because none of them were truly ready for war," Jinho said. "Those species had lived in peace for thousands of years. They had forgotten how to fight. They built their cities and grew their food and made art and music. When you arrived with your weapons they had no choice but to surrender." Admiral Kethvar closed his eyes and tried not to think about all those conquered worlds. Each one had been easy to take because the aliens living there were not warriors. They were farmers and artists and scientists who just wanted to live peaceful lives. "Earth has been ready for centuries," Jinho said, and now his voice carried a hint of something dangerous. "We never stopped preparing for war because we never stopped fighting wars. While other species learned to live in peace, humans learned to build better weapons, stronger armor, and smarter tactics." The human admiral gestured toward something off-camera, and the view changed to show the wreckage of the Zephyrian fleet floating through space. Thousands of pieces of metal that had once been proud warships now drifted like garbage among the stars. "This is what happens when a species that has forgotten how to fight meets a species that has never stopped learning how to fight," Jinho said. The camera returned to show Jinho's face. Behind him, Captain Park and Commander Kim stood at attention like soldiers ready for the next battle. Their faces were serious but not cruel. They looked like people who had done what was necessary to protect their home. I want to be very clear about what happens next, Jinho said, and now his voice became harder and more serious. Earth is under human protection now. This solar system belongs to humanity, and we will defend it against anyone who tries to take it from us. He paused again, making sure that every alien watching understood exactly what he was saying. Any species that comes to Earth in peace will find welcome, Jinho continued. We are not monsters who kill for pleasure. We want to trade with other worlds, share knowledge, and learn about the galaxy. Our scientists have many questions about the universe, and we hope other species will help us find answers. The Admiral's expression became cold and dangerous. But any species that comes to Earth with conquest in mind will share the fate of this armada. You will be destroyed completely and without mercy. Jinho looked directly at Admiral Kethvar through the screen. Tell your empire what you have seen here today. Tell them that Earth is not just another weak planet waiting to be conquered. Tell them that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and we have been waiting for someone to make the mistake of attacking our home. The message ended, leaving the Zephyrian Empire to contemplate a new and terrifying reality. The age of easy conquest was over. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same.